Kennedy did not leave that restaurant because the waiter dropped the tray he left, because of what the manager did too. That waiter in front of everyone in Kennedy could not sit still for one more second after watching it. Washington, District of Columbia, November 1961, a five-star restaurant, a dropped tray, a manager who made the wrong move in front of the wrong man. If you believe power reveals itself in the smallest moments, subscribe so these untold stories find you. Washington, District of Columbia, November 14, 1961, 8:47 in the evening. The kind of cold that comes off the Potomac River and gets into your coat before you realize it is already inside your bones, had settled over the city by the time the black car pulled up in front of Maisin Laurent on Connecticut Avenue Northwest. The restaurant had been open since 1953 and in that time had served 4 senators, 2 secretaries of state, 1 Supreme Court justice, and a foreign dignitary whose name the owner, Henry Beaumont, kept framed behind the host stand in a small gold frame next to the reservation book because it was the kind of name that made other names want to sit near it. Henry was 51 years old, with silver hair kept short, and a way of moving through a dining room that made every table feel like it had been personally selected for the people sitting at it. He had built Maisin Laurent from a narrow lease and a borrowed kitchen into the kind of place where Washington came when Washington wanted to feel like Paris, and he had done it without ever once raising his voice in the dining room, because Henry Beaumont believed that elegance was not decoration, it was discipline. The man who stepped out of the black car that evening was 34 years old and had been president of the United States for 10 months. He came with 2 aides and without the full detail because he had asked for a quiet evening, and the people around him had learned by now that when he asked for something quietly, it was not a request, it was a temperature reading. He was wearing a dark suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt open in the way that made the photographers reach for their cameras when they caught it, because it suggested a man who was thinking about something more important than how he looked, which was itself a kind of performance he had mastered without appearing to have mastered anything. He had a paperback in his coat pocket, the spine bent from reading in cars, and the book pressing a soft, square shape through the fabric of his jacket. The table was in the east corner, away from the windows, a good table. Henry himself had walked them to it and had taken the drink order personally, which was the kind of attention that communicated value without stating it. The dining room was about 2/3 full. The light was the warm amber that good restaurants understood was doing as much work as the food. A small quartet was playing in the far corner, something low and French that nobody was listening to, and everybody was hearing. His name was Marcus Webb. He was 22 years old and had been working at Maisin Laurent for 7 months, which was long enough to know the floor plan in his sleep, and short enough that he still got nervous on busy nights. He had grown up in Anacostia across the river in a house his grandmother owned, and had taken the bus to Connecticut Avenue every morning since August because the pay was the best he had found, and because a woman named Gloria in the hiring office had looked at his application and said, "You carry yourself well," which was the first time anyone in a professional building had said that to him, and he had not forgotten it. He was carrying a full tray that evening, a rack of lamb for table 7, a seafood bisque for table 9, a side of roasted vegetables, and 2 glasses of a 1958 Bordeaux that Henry had opened himself, because the bottle deserved the attention. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. Marcus Webb was 3 steps from table 7 when the heel of his left shoe caught the edge of the carpet runner that Henry had been meaning to have re-tacked for 2 weeks. The tray went, the rack of lamb went, the bisque went, the Bordeaux went. The sound it made was the kind of sound a dining room remembers. The quartet stopped. The room turned. Marcus was on one knee on the carpet, surrounded by the wreckage of $400 worth of food and wine, and he was not moving because his body had made the calculation that stillness was the only available response to something this large. Henry Beaumont was across the room in 11 seconds. He covered the distance with the speed of a man who has built something and watched it threatened, and Marcus Webb was still on one knee when Henry arrived and stood over him, and what Henry said in the next 45 seconds was said in a voice low enough that the tables nearest to them could hear the shape of it without catching every word, but the shape was enough. The shape was a man being reduced in public by someone with the authority to do it. Henry used the word careless, he used the word embarrassment, he used the phrase, "This is not the kind of establishment," and he said the last part, looking not at Marcus, but at the room, as if the room itself needed to be reassured that this had nothing to do with Maisin Laurent and everything to do with the young man on the carpet. At the corner table, in the east of the room, the President of the United States had gone very still. He had set down his water glass. He was watching Henry Beaumont with the specific quality of attention he gave to things. He was deciding about one of his aides, said something low near his left shoulder. He did not respond. He watched Marcus Webb get to his feet with the careful posture of a man putting himself back together in public, which is one of the hardest things a person can do, and which requires a kind of dignity that is not taught anywhere. He watched Marcus nod once at Henry and begin picking up what could be picked up from the floor. He stood up. He did not say anything to his aides. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He walked across the dining room. He walked to where Marcus Webb was crouched near the baseboard, picking up a serving fork, and he crouched down next to him on the carpet of Maisin Laurent on Connecticut Avenue Northwest on a cold November evening, and he picked up the other serving fork and he held it out, and Marcus Webb looked up from the floor and saw who was crouched next to him, and the expression on Marcus Webb's face in that moment was something that the two aides watching from the corner table would both describe years later in separate conversations as the most purely human thing they had ever seen in 4 years of working in close proximity to power. The president said two things to Marcus Webb while they were both crouched on that carpet. He said the first thing quietly enough that only Marcus heard it. Marcus Webb would not repeat it publicly for 31 years. The second thing he said was audible to the nearest table, which was table 6, a party of 3 who had been talking about a trade bill and who stopped talking about the trade bill. He said, "It is a carpet, it is food. Nobody went hungry tonight." Then he stood up, he put on his jacket. He looked at Henry Beaumont, who was standing 4 feet away with his silver hair and his disciplined elegance and his face doing something complicated. He said, "Mr. Beaumont, I appreciate the table." He left $400 on the tablecloth next to his water glass. He walked out through the front door of Maisin Laurent and into the cold air of Connecticut Avenue and got into the black car and was gone. Henry Beaumont stood in the middle of his dining room for a long moment after the door closed. He looked at the $400 on the table in the east corner. He looked at Marcus Webb, who was standing near the service station holding the clean tray with both hands. He looked at the room which was looking at him. He had built this place from a narrow lease and a borrowed kitchen. He had believed that elegance was discipline. He was standing in the middle of what he had built and understanding for the first time that he had confused discipline with power, and that a man had just shown him in 45 seconds what the difference looked like. Marcus Webb worked at Maisin Laurent for 3 more weeks after that. November evening, he gave his notice on a Friday morning, and Henry accepted it without the conversation either of them had been having in their heads since the night on the carpet. Marcus took a position at a hotel on 16th Street Northwest, where a manager named Dorothy Sims had heard about him through a woman named Gloria, who had heard through the particular network that exists in every city between the people who do the work and the people who notice who does it. Well, he stayed at that hotel for 9 years. He became the floor manager in 1968. He became the general manager in 1972. He retired in 1991. At his retirement dinner in the banquet room of the hotel he had run for 19 years, he gave a short speech. He thanked Dorothy Sims. He thanked Gloria. He thanked the staff by name, each one in the order they had joined the team. At the end of the speech, he said one more thing. He said, "There was a night in 1961 when a man got down on a carpet next to me and picked up a fork, and I have spent 30 years trying to understand what he was showing me. I think what he was showing me was that dignity is not something a room gives you, it is something you carry in, and if someone tries to take it, the only person who can let them is you." He did not say the man's name. He did not need to. Everyone in that banquet room already knew if this story reached something inside you about the kind of power that does not announce itself. Subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded what real leadership looks like. Tap that thumbs up for more untold stories about the human being behind the history, and tell us in the comments about the moment someone got down on the floor next to you when they did not have to ring the bell, so the next story finds you when it is ready, because the most important things a powerful man ever did were never in the history books. They happened in the quiet moments when nobody was supposed to be watching, and those are exactly the stories we are here to tell.